Greetings and welcome, everybody. This is Chuck, and I am really excited today. I know that's really rare for me to say. I'm really excited today, but I have a new friend that I met in Cleveland just about a month ago at the CEX conference that I've talked about. I've talked with Joe. I've talked with Brian. You know, I'm a big fan of content marketing and network marketing. However, this is kind of a special treat. Lee is joining me today. Lee Judge, welcome. Hi,
Chuck. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. What's really cool about this is that Lee and I really didn't know each other until we bumped into each other over at CEX. And Bernie, who you saw last week, was one that introduced us. Now, you know, Bernie's one of my longtime colleagues and friends on the network. And doing podcasting so long ago, it's kind of really cool to see a fresh, young, good-looking guy like Lee that's in this business and killing it as far as I can tell. And Lee, I've read some really awesome articles. You're more of a techie too, though, aren't you?
Quite a bit of one. It's one of those things that it's a skill set that I utilize, but I don't publicize. So
good.
It's good to have.
Right on. Yeah. I mean, I cut my teeth in the tech industry way back when I was a wee young thing in IBM in the late 90s. I hate to admit. No, actually mid 90s, because now I think about Windows 95 came out while I was working for IBM. So, you know, I have cables for computers that are older than you, but it's all good.
Yeah, I've got a drawer full of cables that don't fit anything anymore as well.
How come we not just throw those away, man? I just can't give it up.
Well,
I'm gonna need this one day.
I'll tell you exactly why. Because just last week I was trying to find a particular kind of power cable, like a 5-volt for a light or something. And I went through the drawer of crap I should have thrown away 10 years ago, and I found the adapter that worked for it. So I'm like, see, justification to keep all this crap another 10 years.
Yeah, man, I found a zip drive. You remember those? Did you have those back in the day?
Yeah.
And there were discs with it too. It's like, wow, I wonder what kind of gold I saved on these so many years ago.
Now, I'll bet that those are not coming back. So
I'm kind of with you on that. They were a little hinky. They, weren't 100% reliable. And boy, I really hated to have to go back for any kind of backup files that I put on that sucker. It took forever to transfer.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone down nostalgia road, and like I said, my gray hairs are showing on more than that than yours. But
I just shaved them, that's all.
Well, that's a smart thing, because I dyed them for years, and that's just not fun. So, and in a more serious note, you're into podcasting now and creating your own content network for your clients. So from what I understand, you offer it soup to nuts. Is that right?
Yeah. The origin of our podcast offering came from, we were already doing content marketing, and I was originally, before my business even launched, I was a marketing director hiring agencies. Oh, wow. But those agencies didn't understand marketing, which caused the initial friction. And then we began doing podcasts, and we realized that most podcast companies didn't help record the podcast. They said, they said, send us your content and we'll either put it on our network or we'll edit it for you. They were editing companies. And I knew from being in the chair of that marketer, we need you to hold our hands from day one and make this thing happen. And so that's kind of where, when Content Monsta got into the podcast business, that was the thing. We're going to offer it from beginning to end, from marketing strategy, ideation of the podcast, recording the podcast with you, all the way to creating content from the podcast to help promote your show.
So, being top tech and talking all the top tech with no technobabble, you give them to me straight. I wanted to ask you, I've read a lot lately on where to host your podcast and who helps you get on the different podcast directories. And, there's so many services and so much confusion out there. Help an old guy out, man. I'm back in the business. I'm doing all my own content. Now, because I know how to create a podcast channel, we had to write the code for the RSS feed on our own back in the day. Wow. So, I have all my content hosted on, all the toptech.tech. What do you guys do when you have a client that just says, I don't want to mess with any of that. Put me on, record me, you take it from there. Where do I put it?
So if you're a podcaster looking to answer that question of where do I host it and how do I get it out there? The first question is, what is your commercial intent? Do you want to have a podcast to perhaps boost your personal brand or to sell something on your podcast? Sure. In that case, maybe a network works for you. Whereas you create the podcast, hand it to a network, and they help market it and publicize it.
Mhm.
And you get maybe a part of the proceeds of your advertising. The result could be building a brand. Maybe you don't care about the advertising revenue. You just want to blow up and be famous or whatever. If that's your goal, networks work.
That's what
But
TikTok's for, right?
Exactly. But interestingly, we've had people come to us who were on networks who said, we're doing really well now, but the network is taking all the revenue. We have relationships. We could sell our own ads. So why are we even with the network? So they come to us and we help them not only produce their commercials or their ads or promos, but we don't care to be a network. We just help them host it. Mm-hmm. And so there are tons of different hosting platforms. We have our favorites, but there's ones like Transistor and Libsyn, all the other platforms where you manage your own hosting, you manage your own advertising, you keep your revenue, right? So that's what we do for our customers. Our customers tend to be B2B, so they don't do a lot of advertising anyway. They want to promote their own business.
Yeah.
So, networks
so it's
for
more
them,
informational, and it's things about passing along, tech specs and how to do what you do and on all the stuff that B2B worry about.
Right. And we have a lot of tech companies as clients, and they want to be the authority or the information source for their industry, right? Cool. So they're not trying to be the most popular podcast. They're trying to be the one that is the information source for their industry.
Gotcha. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Again, I've done both B2B and B2C kind of commercials, but now that I'm kind of a brand and I'm doing my own thing, it's overwhelming. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of options back in the day. I'm sorry I keep bringing that up. The old guy here complaining about, we didn't do it that way when I was a kid. No, I had to create a lot of those, connections and relationships. So, we're seeing AI enter into this. I talk about it just about every episode with different people because of their perspective. Do you see AI being a help or hindrance to your podcast business?
It is a tremendous tool. It's a tremendous help because some of the tasks that we do, I mean, when someone asked me one day, do I think that AI will replace jobs? Well, admittedly, we need less writers now than we used to, right? So we would have a task, for example, of summarizing a podcast or summarizing, for example, we have some clients who have white papers, long white papers and information. They want to discuss that in their podcast, but it needs to be summarized and narrowed down. Mm-hmm. So we can use AI to help us examine the content and break it down into talkable bullet points.
Right on.
That's something that we can use AI for. So yes, AI is definitely a help, whether it's summarizing content to create a conversation, or if it's even using AI to summarize an existing podcast, take this transcript and turn it into the summary, the bullet points, the pull quotes.
Right. Yep.
AI definitely serves for those purposes.
I got into Substack because apparently that's what, correspondents do when they make tech shows. I had to put all my content in text so that it was searchable. And, just taking our audio, for example, I will use an AI tool that will extract all the text. It comes out pretty well edited. I may have to touch it up here and there, but I can post that right into a Substack. And, that content stays out there and it is searchable. Yeah. And it's also an RSS feed, which is really what, podcasting is about. So, when you're looking at searchable content, do you find anything that's helpful in, I understand it's not promotional when it's, B2B, but there's got to be something that helps you stand out in the search engines or some sort of tools that you guys use to get placed better.
Well, I mean, in terms of AI, you can definitely, when you begin to ideate what you're going to talk about on your podcast, you could use AI to say, we want to talk about new semiconductors. What are the keywords we should include in our conversation? Right. So then you have those keywords and you use those keywords to write out your questions or plan your conversation. Then you have a natural conversation because Google loves natural expert information, right? Have a natural conversation using those keywords that AI helped you dig up. And so in that case, yes, AI is helping there. And then on the back end, when it's time to title your podcast, write notes for your podcast, you can double check you're using the right keywords, and another place where AI can come in to help with that.
Sure. I have actually seen tools now that are embedded with YouTube videos that you can scan your YouTube and they will give you suggestions for keywords and how to get better placed on concepts. It's pretty broad, but you can narrow that down. And I'm blown away. I mean, these are concepts we didn't even think about when we're just putting out the first audio podcast, let alone something like video now. There are AI tools that are scanning your videos and telling you what the content of this and giving you a nice summary. That's got to be helpful.
Yeah, and I expect over time, you'll see some of these things being adopted by the platforms themselves. Like, for example, YouTube has been transcribing your audio from video for years.
That's
right?
true.
I did a talk, it's probably been 5 years ago, called Creating Content for the Robots. And when I told the audience that YouTube literally does see what you're saying, because they are transcribing it in real time, whether you utilize it or not, the words are there and the words are searchable. Now imagine Google, being one of the leaders in AI, if they just go ahead and say, we've watched your video, here's our summary for it. That could be baked into their platform. And I expect it will be at some point.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about all the things they're bringing out now for the Google suite of online products in the cloud and all of the Google Docs and whatnot. I mean, that is something that if I didn't have to pay for an extra service and it's already baked in, that would be brilliant. Then I don't have the question about where am I going to get my next tools that I've got to add, that just adds to the expense of creating a show.
Right. And you mentioned tools. Right now, I mentioned this morning in the conversation, there is an explosion of tools. And I would say majority of these tools are just pre-written scripts for the things we want to do. Right.
I mean, now, is that what you're referring to as prompts? I didn't mean to interrupt, but are those the prompts? Okay, great.
Right. So let's say, for example, you write a prompt that says, listen to this podcast, give me a title, give me a summary, give me bullet points. That's a prompt that today we have software and tools to do that for us, because everybody's not used to writing prompts. But most of these tools are just writing prompts in the background for us for that particular thing. So let's say you actually want to I want you to listen to all the automotive podcasts and tell me what is the trending conversation. You could literally write a prompt to do that.
Right. And
if you wanted to give it a logo and a website, now you have a new tool, when really you're just writing a prompt for GPT.
Yep.
So, I think what we're going to see is a lot of these tools, there's an explosion of hundreds per day popping up. At some point, two things are going to happen. One, they're going to be built into the platforms we're already using. So they'll be built into YouTube as opposed to having a browser extension or another app. It'll be built in. So that's going to knock out a lot of these newcomers with all these apps. And the other thing will be, there'll just be some platforms that do all those things in one, that make it easier for us to just talk to it, and give us the prompt and give us the answer.
What I'm seeing now is there's actually prompts out there that help you write software for tools, and it turns it into the code and everything that you need. All you have to do is wrap it up yourself and you're done. I mean, we're in that world that, we talked about 20 years ago when we said, oh, computers are going to write their own software. We're not going to have to worry about that. I just, I ignored that, because there's no way you would make me believe. Even today, I'm skeptical about it, how good the AI has gotten at doing these things. Now, I have to just comment, because every single person I've asked, especially those from CEX, about AI, not one of them has been scared that it's going to take away their job. So you're in good company. I think we all just agree that, it's how you use the tool. If you use it for good, you get good. If you use it for evil, you get Terminators. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'll give an example. So I wanted to write this. I wanted this application, this web application, that I wanted to do certain things. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, I want to do A, B, C, and D on a web. I give it a full description, the way I would give to a developer.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And so the response it got, I said, what programming platform would I use? What language would I use to do this? It said you could use Java or Python. I said, okay, if I want to use Java, what is the code for Java? It gave me all the Java code for what I needed to do. But here's where it does not replace the human.
Okay.
I had the code. I didn't know where to put it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what,
how do you compile it? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you need Java for this. You need HTML for that. You need to be able to, you need a web host, you need AWS, all these things you need.
Right.
Somebody has to know how to put all those things together. Now, I could have kept asking it and it could have told me all those things,
sure,
but I would still have to do it. And then if I made a mistake, who do I go to? So there's still a place for that human who understands all those tools to make that thing work. And in most cases, in most industries, in most professions, no matter how much you know, knowledge is one thing, but doing an experience is something totally different.
There's nothing to replace experience. We've seen that in any of the AI simulators out there, or human speak, or any of the ones that are trying to replace something like what you and I do. They're hosting content, they're creating stuff, or they're even thinking on the fly. And we're not there yet, thankfully. I do other content for other clients and radio, and I see the day when sometime they're going to be able to replace me on the radio, maybe. But believe it or not, audio to fake is a lot harder than video. Syncing lips and all that is, one thing. But anyway, without getting too technobabble here, big screen up for my, I don't like to go into the great tech details. I do, however, I want to talk to you about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. In talking Web3, there's a lot of discussion about blockchain and tokens, things that are kind of helping us identify, and especially ownership. Content ownership, it was a big issue for me. When I first started publishing things, I would find my videos on other people's websites. And no accreditation, no link backs, no love, it was stolen. There's no two ways to put it. What do you think we're going to see as far as, let's just call it tools now, for blockchain and ownership of your content?
Well, I've not done as much depth in the Web3 as I should, but I do have an opinion on what you asked.
Good. That's all I'm asking for.
Well, the thing is, verification of ownership it's only as good as the people who it's a trust factor. In other words, if you give a key to a thief, the thief has the key. I mean, it's an honest man's game, right?
Yeah.
So
it's a lock for people that are honest. You're right.
Yeah, if you think about when MP3s came around and everybody panicked, like, wow, we can pass around music all day long. Who owns it now? Yep. I paid for the download. Do I own it? Does the artist own it? Who owns it?
Right.
We went through a musical chaos for about 3 years trying to figure out what happens with audio. And then it came to a point where we found new ways to make revenue off of music. Streams, for example. Things got counted differently. Contracts that are still, some of them outdated.
Oh yeah,
there are still contracts paying for vinyl, probably, and cassettes, but this is another story. Contracts had to catch up. The physical contracts, and so will the electronic contracts.
Awesome.
So we're still going to be in Wild Wild West for a long time in terms of ownership, because just as the technology of being able to track ownership evolves, so are the ways that we are creating new content that need to be tracked. Right. So if I take your face and your voice and recreate you saying something that you were not involved in, which is what's happening explosively right now with music industry.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. So what if you had a contract on yourself, on the song or the podcast you made, but that was for the one you made? What about the one I made?
My contract changed last week because of a podcast question. My brother's a musician and I want to use his music, but I don't want to give up that ownership rights to my client because it's his music. So I had to kind of retweak the wording on those contracts just for that reason. And I know there's sites like TuneIn.fm. TuneIn is trying to compete in that marketplace with ownership because Spotify is paying nickels and dimes on royalties where they used to get dollars and tens of dollars, So those streams, they're counted differently now. And I think, tagging that with a much more friendly, traceable, serial number that becomes a token, that's, without getting the technobabble again, to me, that's a big win for artists and creators.
Well, the thing is, the new forms of content are changing as fast or faster than the technology to track ownership.
That is true.
So by the time you figure out how to get an NFT or a web contract on your content, someone else is creating a content of you for you that seems to be by you, but it's not.
Yeah, right.
Then you got to figure it out. I mean, right now the record companies are scrambling because you got hit songs occurring that had no
people
of the
behind
artist.
Them. Right.
So say you have a Drake song,
right,
and Drake is a hit song. Everybody wants it, but at the same time, the label nor Drake were involved in it. So we got to figure out how do we track that? Who pays for it? Who owns it? It's still wild, wild west. It's gonna be that way for a while.
So, when you're talking about suing people and getting money for things that they didn't create, or getting money out of people that created something that wasn't theirs, stealing images and arts and so forth, I talked to a digital IP attorney, and this guy's been doing it long as I've been podcasting. So I really trust his advice when it comes to, what happens when AI creates something that wasn't really me, but it looks like me, sounds like me, whatever. And he says it's really simple. If a human created it, they can copyright it. If a machine created it, they cannot. So, the law's been defined. It's just that now, what's the gray area? Did the programmer who created the AI prompt create the content based on parameters that he put in there? Yeah. So, it's going to be gray for a while, but just like searching images, 20 years ago, you couldn't find the creator, the name of an image if it was just a Google image online somewhere. We had to create tagging and special codes that would allow you to claim ownership of it, or put a digital stamp on there somewhere hidden behind it that gave you that ability. So I think that's yet to be determined, but I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah.
Lee, I was on your profile today on LinkedIn, and you always have such great articles and posts up there, but you had a video with somebody talking about the long content marketing. Get into that for just a little bit with me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, the exciting thing about where we are today is that even though audio and video are taking the lead of the types of content that people are consuming, we have what we call those big content, podcasts and video, because from those, we can create any other kind of content. We can create text from that. We can utilize the AI we talked about to create text or shorts, or social content. So in the early days of Content Monsta, we used to also market that we did text content like blogs and articles. But we realized with a few of the Google changes, especially, two things. Google likes naturally spoken content, and it likes expert content. Those are things that a writer cannot create. A writer can't suddenly be an expert in nuclear physics or in cybersecurity, right?
Sure, right.
If you have a podcast of 2 people, 3 people talking about cybersecurity, they are the experts. They use current and significant language to their industry that a writer may not pick up on. And so we take that podcast or that video, and from that, it can birth every other kind of content, from written content, blogs, articles, white papers, etc. So that's kind of the reason why we focused on audio and video, because we can do everything else if we create those 2 types of content.
You're literally repurposing everything that you've recorded and being able to use it in multiple places and get other people's attention through that. It's just like I tell people, sometimes you're a phone mail guy. Sometimes you're an email person. You may be somebody different that, I can only reach through Messenger on Facebook. Everybody has their preferred way of communicating. There's no different when it comes to consuming content. You may be a YouTuber, but you'd rather see it native, or I really just want the audio. I don't have time for video. So yeah, I'm in that camp now where I'm creating multiple streams of content out of every single episode, no matter what the platform, because everybody wants something different. Now, that doesn't mean that should be your market. We're not trying to hit everybody on the planet, But if I'm a guy that creates mainly video, how do I reach those people? Like in a Substack, I told you, I just have it all digitally transcribed and put it into a different database.
And I can tell you from experience of all the content we create, because we've created content from both directions, from big content like podcasts and video going down to text. We've also done it from starting with text and going up to video and podcast.
All right.
And I will tell you, it is more efficient going down from the bigger content to the written. The reason being that you can utilize AI better. So let's say, for example, you have this podcast. We can utilize AI for transcription, to pull out notes, to write the article from this, because we actually said these things, and AI can take our actual conversation, clean it up into an article, and it's new content.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Going the other way around, starting with text, you have to start with, you can't get your CEO or your CTO to write an article, right? That's hard to do.
To get them to answer the phone. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So to start with expert content, writing is difficult.
Yeah.
And then once you take that and say, hey, let's have a conversation about it, then you have to make bullet points of that to have the conversation or to have the video. It's an uphill battle. You can make the content, it can be done, but it's uphill, as opposed to you can definitely have a meeting with the CTO or CEO and say, hey, come be on my podcast, talk to me for 30 minutes. Now you have that expertise and experience in that video or podcast. You can always go downhill and create all the written content you want.
Absolutely. Lee, I have really enjoyed this. I want to give you the last word here, but I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, man. You've been great to chat with in live and in person, as well as here on the podcast. Give me your quick plug on your on all your socials and your website, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, you can find me everywhere at aleejudge.com. My website is both aleejudge.com, and the company is Content Monsta, Monsta, contentmonsta.com. And of course, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Thanks for having me on your podcast, Chuck. My podcast, I need to have you on sometime in the future. It's called The Business of Marketing, and we talk about all things business of marketing. And those are all the places you can find me. So thanks.
Thank you, Lee Judge, everybody. I really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for watching. We love you guys. Tune in next time when we're talking more about top tech here on the Top Tech Talk Show. I'm Chuck. Have a great one.